e os centros de detenção no país, e também sobre a taxa de ocupação das prisões. Com esta questão vem a da categorização dos prisioneiros, mais concretamente a separação que o país faz entre detidos e condenados, homens e mulheres, jovens com menos de 18 anos, com mais de 18 anos, portanto, estas questões todas que constam das diretrizes de Luanda e das diretrizes a nível internacional. Gostaríamos também de saber qual é o tratamento que é dispensado aos grupos mais vulneráveis nas prisões. Estamos a falar de pessoas idosas, mulheres grávidas, pessoas doentes com HIV. Portanto, são faixas que merecem alguma atenção especial e específica nos locais de detenção. Ligado a isto, ilustre delegação, vem a questão dos quadros colocados nessas prisões, nesses estabelecimentos prisionais. Como são recrutados e, se possível, que números dispõem? Porque isto permite-nos ter uma rácio entre o número da população prisional e o número de guardas ao dispor dessas instituições prisionais. Gostaríamos também que fosse dada alguma informação sobre guardas do sexo feminino, porque com certeza que a Costa do Marfim tem prisioneiras e estas precisam de um tratamento específico. E se for dispensado por mulheres, melhor. Gostaria também de pedir à delegação que nos fornecesse informação sobre as condições de sanidade das prisões. Que condições de sanidade temos nas nossas prisões na Costa do Marfim? Porque as informações a que temos acesso dizem-nos que não são as melhores essas condições. Porém, nada melhor do que ouvir da ilustre delegação estatal e também saber quais as medidas que estão sendo tomadas para pôr cobro a essa situação periclitante que provavelmente existe, mas vamos deixar que confirmem. E em consequência disto, como é que são garantidos os direitos à saúde e à alimentação nas prisões? É que não encontramos quase informação nenhuma a respeito, e nós sabemos que a nível da União Africana este é o ano da nutrição, e infelizmente a faixa dos prisioneiros, que é uma parte da população africana, tem sido deixada para trás. Queremos convidar a delegação costa-marfinense a fornecer informações se registraram casos de tortura em locais de detenção, se houve acusação contra os seus perpetradores ou suspeitos. Também se registraram algum caso de morte durante o período abrangido pelo relatório. E se sim, houve alguma investigação exaustiva, independente e imparcial. Eu estou fazendo questão de falar devagar por causa da tradução, Sr. Presidente. Espero que seja relevado qualquer tempo extra que eu usar. A Comissão toma nota com agrado da descentralização da assistência jurídica pela criação de escritórios nos novos tribunais de primeira instância na Costa do Marfim. É uma informação que temos e retiramos do vosso relatório. Será que esses serviços de assistência jurídica dispõem de recursos adequados que lhes permitem levar a cabo a sua missão? Porque só assim podemos falar em promover a justiça. Também tomamos nota dos esforços que estão sendo levados a cabo pelas autoridades costa-marfinenses para a formação dos responsáveis pela aplicação da lei. Mas dos dados colhidos do relatório, só esta formação foi centrada na diretriz de Robben Island. Portanto, penso que os outros instrumentos devem também ser integrados. Então a pergunta é, será que há alguma intenção de que os outros instrumentos adotados pela Comissão serão integrados ou são integrados na formação das pessoas responsáveis pela aplicação da lei? Estou a falar das diretrizes de Luanda, estou a falar das diretrizes sobre as regras de Mandela. Penal ou criminal, dependendo com certeza, como em qualquer lugar, de adequados à sua condição de...
Madford Zakaria Mwandenga. 7 minutes. Merci.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellencies, Chairpersons of National Human Rights Institutions, and distinguished delegates. May I also join the Chair and the other commissioners who've spoken before me to thank the delegation of Ivory Coast for the report that they presented to this session. I have some questions to ask on economic, social, and cultural rights. And there are a couple of them, and they are as follows. We note that Ivory Coast ratified the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights in 1992. The question that we have is, what are the obstacles to the presentation of the initial report by Ivory Coast to the UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which we believe has been due since 1994? Regarding Article 14, which deals with the right to property of the Charter, the Commission notes the various initiatives taken by the Ivorian authorities to promote access to property, including in rural areas and in favor of women. The question that we have is, what is the actual impact in terms of access to land following the implementation of the legislative framework and relevant programs and initiatives during the reporting period? The Commission also notes the establishment of a commission for the restitution of public and private property illegally occupied after the post-electoral crisis, which in 2018 registered a total of 1,805 complaints, of which 1,265 were settled. This is in respect of paragraph 180 of the report. Could the Honorable Delegation from Ivory Coast provide us more details on the types of claims that were filed and the methods of settlement, whether amicable or judicial process, and on the payment of compensation in addition to the return of property? Regarding the right to housing, we note that the report states that the National Development Plan 2012-2015 enabled the setting up of 71 social housing construction sites, that is in respect of paragraph 109 of the report. The questions that we have are the following. Was there any similar framework to the PND during the reporting period? Number two, what initiatives are currently being taken by the Ivorian authorities to address the issue of inadequate housing? Number three, what measures are the authorities taking to address the issue of underperformance by local property developers? This is in respect to paragraph 110 of the report, and thus facilitate the completion of the planned housing projects. Lastly, but not the least, number four, what safeguards are there for non-discrimination in terms of access to housing for marginalized populations? The next one is under Article 15, which deals with the right to work under equitable conditions. We also have 4 questions under this article. Could the Honorable Delegation provide an update on the results achieved in Ivory Coast under the National Employment Policy 2016-2020. This is in respect of your paragraph 272. Number 2, what initiatives have been taken to promote vocational training and job creation for young people and women? Number 3, what is the rate of informal employment in Ivory Coast, and what measures have the authorities taken in this respect? Lastly, but not the least, number 4, what is the legal regime governing the issue of domestic work in Ivory Coast? A subsidiary question to this is, what are the guarantees to ensure respect for the rights of domestic workers? Then, under Article 16, the right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health, we do note that the report highlights the efforts which Ivory Coast has made to improve access to health care and bring services closer to the people. We have a number of questions under this head, and the first one being, what are the
Use the lift.
Is the budget allocated to the health sector, which is estimated as far back as in child health and care for people living with HIV. What are the other areas in which free health care is available in Ivory Coast? Is a subsidiary question to that. And is the government considering moving towards universal coverage? Then number 4, can the delegation provide information and gender disaggregated data on the number of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and social workers in all the hospitals and health facilities? Number 5, could the Honorable Delegation provide information on the mental health situation in Ivory Coast and on the measures in place to provide adequate access to health care for the mentally ill? Lastly, what lessons can the Ivorian delegation share with the Commission as feedback in the context of combating the COVID-19 pandemic? Then the right to health, a few questions which I have, we need answers to those. One is, are there any sanctions against parents or guardians for premeditated non-enrollment of children? Could the delegation provide examples of any sanctions imposed during the reporting period? Number 2, is public education free in Ivory Coast? Number 3, could the delegation provide information on the evolution of the budget allocated to education sector during the reporting period? And lastly, under this head, what measures have been taken or are planned to reduce the impact of stereotypes and social cultural factors that hinder schooling, especially for girls in the remote areas? Then the Commission also takes note of the measures to promote education in quantitative terms. How does Ivory Coast plan to promote education in terms of quality? Well, there are some questions on the right to social and economic and cultural development. I'm sure you have the document. I won't recount them. We are especially targeting your paragraph 105. Thank you, Chair.
Merci, commissaire Madford. Je vais maintenant passer la parole à la commissaire Marie-Louise Agomo pour 7 minutes.
Merci de me passer la parole, Monsieur le Président. Je salue respectueusement tous les participants présents dans cette salle. Et avant d'entrer dans le vif du sujet, je voudrais présenter mes respects à la délégation ivoirienne et réitérer de vive voix ici mes remerciements pour l'accueil et l'encadrement dont nous avons bénéficié lors de la tenue de l'atelier de notre mécanisme en terre ivoirienne en août dernier. Cela étant, la Commission, par ma voix, note avec satisfaction dans le rapport, au paragraphe 135, que la Constitution ivoirienne du 8 novembre 2016 prévoit une protection spécifique des personnes vulnérables, dont les seniors, comme on les appelle en Côte d'Ivoire, et les personnes en situation de handicap en son article 32. Cependant, s'agissant des personnes handicapées, en plus de ces dispositions constitutionnelles, c'est vrai que vous avez évoqué un certain nombre de lois tout à l'heure, mais nous voudrions savoir quels sont les cadres légaux et réglementaires de la promotion et de la protection des personnes handicapées en Côte d'Ivoire. Nous aimerions également avoir des données statistiques désagrégées et à jour sur la prise en charge des droits de ces personnes et également une mise à jour sur la mise en place de la politique d'accélération du développement du capital humain dont vous faites état au paragraphe 310 de votre rapport. La Commission note avec intérêt les efforts du gouvernement ivoirien pour l'insertion professionnelle des personnes en situation de handicap, notamment le décret 2018-456 du 9 mai 2018 relatif à l'emploi des personnes handicap au paragraphe 100. Cependant, nous aimerions savoir quels sont les enseignements que vous avez tirés du projet d'employabilité des personnes en situation de handicap lancé depuis 2017. Et nous aimerions savoir également quels sont les mécanismes et moyens mis en place par les autorités ivoiriennes pour s'assurer que les personnes handicapées participent à l'élaboration de toutes les initiatives destinées à promouvoir et à protéger leurs droits. Par ailleurs, quelles sont les mesures prises pour assurer l'accessibilité des infrastructures, des biens et des services publics privés, et privés dans les zones tant urbaines que rurales? Je pense notamment aux moyens de transport, aux médias. Quels sont les résultats de l'exploitation du numéro vert, le numéro 142, pour la dénonciation de toutes les atteintes et violations des droits des personnes en situation de handicap? Et quels sont les recours administratifs et judiciaires disponibles, favorisant une réparation aux victimes de formes multiples et croisées de discrimination fondées sur le handicap? Quels sont les mécanismes de soutien mis en place pour les familles ayant des enfants handicapés? Et pour en finir avec le volet personnes handicap, la Commission aimerait savoir où est-ce que la République de Côte d'Ivoire en est avec son intention de ratifier le protocole sur les droits des personnes handicapées en Afrique. S'agissant maintenant des personnes âgées, nous aimerions obtenir des données statistiques désagrégées et à jour sur les personnes âgées et la prise en charge de leurs droits. Nous aimerions également que la délégation développe davantage sur le projet national d'assistance aux personnes âgées au paragraphe 310, quels sont ses objectifs, quelles sont ses priorités et quels sont les moyens dont il dispose. Nous aimerions aussi connaître les dispositifs des personnes âgées au processus de prise de décision les concernant et quels sont les obstacles identifiés susceptibles d'empêcher cette participation effective, notamment à la vie publique, sociale, culturelle ou politique, et quelles sont les mesures prises pour assurer l'accessibilité des infrastructures, des biens et services publics et privés dans les zones tant urbaines que rurales, notamment évidemment les moyens de transport, les médias, les services bancaires pour les personnes âgées. Quels sont les mécanismes de soutien mis en place pour les personnes âgées et particulièrement celles en difficulté? Et pour finir, à quand la ratification du protocole sur les droits des personnes âgées? Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, commissaire Marie-Louise Abomo. Maintenant, je vais passer la question à madame la commissaire Janet Salanjai. Vous aurez pour votre mécanisme archivé 7 minutes. Vous aurez également 7 minutes pour votre mécanisme sur le rapporteur spécial sur les droits des femmes. Ça va? Vous avez 14 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I believe doing a presentation as under the Maputo Protocol, which you had indicated is 10 minutes, and then the mechanism of the people living with HIV/AIDS for 7 minutes, I believe. I will start by just greeting all the delegates, distinguished delegates here present, and also to comment and congratulate the delegation of Ivory Coast for presenting a very comprehensive report in compliance with Article 62 of the Charter. Also, I would like to commend Ivory Coast for ratifying the Maputo Protocol, a key instrument for promoting women's rights in Africa, and for including some aspects of matters related to the protocol in the report. However, I would like to know whether the government has taken into account guidelines on state reporting under the Maputo Protocol when it was preparing the report. As you know, the Charter, you have an obligation to present a report under the Charter and also obligation to present the report under the Maputo Protocol. So it was anticipated that Part A of the report will relate to the Charter and Part B will relate to the Maputo Protocol with detailed rendition of the legal, legislative, and institutional mechanisms put in place to ensure the implementation of the Maputo Protocol. So just to find out whether you're privy and you're familiar with the guidelines for reporting on the Maputo Protocol. It is clear that structures are indeed in place to implement and domesticate the Maputo Protocol and promote women's rights in the country, as you have highlighted in your report, so there is no doubt about that. But the Commission would like to know to what extent these efforts have been successful and what challenges that have been encountered. I believe if you had done a Part B, that would have come out very clearly. What efforts has the Ivorian government made to disseminate, popularize, and translate the Maputo Protocol so that every citizen in Ivory Coast is aware of the contents of the Maputo Protocol? In addition, we'd like to know whether there are capacity building programs, education and awareness raising programs for all law enforcement officers on women's rights in your country. I think this is very pertinent because if the protocol is to be implemented, we need to have that initiative on the ground. Furthermore, according to Article 425 and 426 of the current Criminal Code of Côte d'Ivoire, abortion is prohibited, we're informed. However, Article 427 provides, I quote, "There is no offense when the doctor provides an abortion to rape victim at the latter's request. In this case, the attending physician or surgeon shall obtain the opinion of two consulting physicians who offer, after examination, shall certify that it was the will of the rape person, duly recorded in writing." You have all these requirements put in place. So we just wonder how come, after the prohibition, you need to go through all these bottlenecks and impediments before a rape victim can benefit from that. The Commission would like to know the measures that have been taken by the Ivorian government to ensure that the provisions of Article 14.2c of the Maputo Protocol are respected and implemented. Is the government taking measures to ensure application of the criminal code includes access to safe and available abortion services in accordance with the provisions of the protocol? Also, are there specific allocations to ensure that comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care services such as family planning, contraceptive, and safe abortion are provided? Is there any legislation currently in force in Côte d'Ivoire that combats sexual violence and other forms of violence against women? And does it include a definition of rape? Here I want to draw attention to matters relating to marital rape and also domestic violence. How does the government deal with the stigmatization of victims of rape and domestic violence? We also want the delegation to provide a summary of legislative measures and national actions, plans, or strategies promoting women's rights that were adopted or were in force during the period under review. So at least this will be very important, making reference to the specific articles of the protocol. With regard to combating discrimination and violence against women, could the delegation provide more details on the national strategy to combat gender-based violence? More details about it. We've been informed about it, but we need to have more details. The Commission is also aware that data on registered cases of gender-based violence are collected through the Gender-Based Violence Information Management System, which is only used by some of the gender-based violence platforms and does not include data on violence documented by non-members of the platform, such as NGOs. This shortcoming regarding the collection of reliable data may prevent victims from reporting sexual violence. In addition, without reliable information on sexual violence, Côte d'Ivoire may be able to develop strategies to combat sexual and gender-based violence and provide care tailored to the needs and relatives of survivors. Can the delegation explain the situation described above? Can the delegation also provide data on recorded cases of gender-based violence, disaggregated by age, geographical location, relationship between perpetrator and victim, Have measures been put in place to ensure access for women to justice, particularly in cases of sexual and domestic violence? And if so, can you provide details? With regard to redress for survivors of sexual violence, are there programs that inform women of existing redress mechanisms for sexual violence and that provide legal aid services for victims? We'd also like to know, and like the government to elaborate, on the frequency and nature of mobile human rights campaigns to combat violence against women and how they reach vulnerable women, including women with disabilities and older women. The Commission adopted at this 64th ordinary session guidelines on combating sexual violence and its consequences in Africa. Also at its 72nd ordinary session, the Commission adopted a resolution on the protection of women against digital violence in Africa, which among other things calls on states to review, adopt legislation that aims at combating all forms of digital violence against women. Can the delegation inform the Commission whether the government received any reports, allegations of digital violence as a form of violence against women in the country? Can the delegation also provide information on the existence of cybersecurity laws and on specific laws on digital violence against women in the country? Are law enforcement officers and other stakeholders trained in identifying and prosecuting cases of online violence against women and their awareness raised on serious cases? There are so many other questions related to digital violence, but in the interest of time, I'll just move to access to public functions and services. I'm sure when you get the written questions, you will have the details. The Commission takes notes of law number 219-870 of 14 October 2019, promoting the representation of women in elective offices. So this is a very laudable initiative. And then the report indicates that women's representation in decision-making in Côte d'Ivoire, we have the statistics. But contrary to what is provided for in the law, the statistics do not actually reflect what the desire and the intention of the law. According to provision of the above law, of the law mentioned, the 30% quota, does it apply to women candidates or elected, women elected in elective offices? Can the delegation provide an assessment regarding the application of the above mentioned law on women at all levels, despite the law that is in place? What legislative order measures are in place to assist indigent women who wish to take legal action or obtain redress of violation of their rights? The Commission would like to know whether self-employed women working in the informal economy, particularly in rural and remote areas, have access to any form of social protection. What specific measures are taken to reduce particularly high illiteracy rate among women and girls in Côte d'Ivoire? Role of women with special needs. Could the Honorable Delegation provide information on the situation of women prisoners and protection offered to them, in particular pregnant women and nursing mothers? In Côte d'Ivoire, has a national action plan been developed for the full and effective implementation of UN Security Council 1325 on women, peace and security? This brings me to the end of the questions as Special Rapporteur. It's less than 10 minutes, but I move on quickly to questions related to people living with HIV and AIDS. In Côte d'Ivoire, the National Public Health System covers the antiretroviral treatment of people living with HIV/AIDS as part of the targeted free healthcare policy initiatives. This is in paragraph 70. However, could the Ivorian delegation explain why the antiretroviral treatment coverage rate does not exceed 76%, just to give us the details? What are the challenges identified in the implementation of law number 2014-430 of 11 July 8 and on the National AIDS Control Program? Could the Ivorian delegation provide detailed statistics disaggregated by gender, age, and region on people living with HIV and AIDS and the evolution of its prevalence in the country during the period under reporting? The Ivorian delegation is also requested to provide updated information on the target population of national awareness and screening campaigns categorized by age, gender, and region. UNAIDS statistics reveal that for people age 15 and over living with HIV and AIDS, the proportion of women is twice that of men. What are the reasons for this disparity? The same source indicates that nearly 20% of people living with HIV and AIDS are unaware of their viral status. What specific measures are being taken to address this situation? With regard to discrimination against people living with HIV and AIDS, which is prohibited by the legislation in force, has the Ivorian justice system dealt with any cases in this regard where any perpetrator was convicted of discrimination against the person with HIV during the reporting period, just to get details of statistics? As access to preventive services, clinical care and treatment in relation to people living with HIV and AIDS, how does the government deal with the people who test positive for both HIV and COVID-19? And how does it deal with the increased psychosocial burdens that result from this distress? In relation to this, how does the government maintain the continuum of care as well as social and mental support system? The COVID-19 pandemic has also led to significant changes in health service delivery. Health inequalities and the consequences of these changes have affected various subgroups of people living with HIV and AIDS who are at risk of contracting the virus. Can the delegation inform the Commission whether the pandemic has affected the provision of health services in the country, including antiretroviral drugs to people living with HIV/AIDS? These are a summary of the questions I have under the Maputo Protocol and under the rubric of people living with HIV/AIDS. I'm sure the details of the questions you will get in due course when we submit the written questions to you. And I thank you very much once more for your presentation. Thank you. Chair, I submit. Chair, I've done it under the time limit.
Merci, commissaire Saranja. Yeah. Après le commissaire Saranja, je crois que c'est l'honorable commissaire Idrissa Sow.
Le président, je voudrais à l'entame de mes propos saluer de la façon la plus respectueuse tous les participants à notre session et féliciter également la délégation, la distinguée délégation de la République de Côte d'Ivoire pour s'être acquittée de son obligation conventionnelle de présentation d'un rapport. J'interviens au titre du mécanisme en charge de la peine de mort, des exécutions extrajudiciaires et des disparitions forcées. Et dans le cadre de cette prise de parole, je poserai des questions spécifiques à ce mécanisme et dans la limite du temps qui m'est imparti, je ferai quelques observations par rapport à des points qui sont contenus dans le rapport. Au titre du mécanisme sur l'abolition de la peine de mort, je constate et relève avec satisfaction que la République de Côte d'Ivoire a, dans sa constitution du 8 novembre 2016, consacré l'inviolabilité du droit à la vie et réaffirmé l'abolition de la peine de mort. Donc c'est un point positif que nous saluons. Toutefois, nous avons un point de préoccupation parce qu'il est clairement établi que la République de Côte d'Ivoire est un État abolitionniste et qu'à ce titre, il devrait peut-être contribuer aux efforts régionaux et internationaux visant l'abolition universelle et effective de la peine de mort. Donc à cet égard, je voudrais savoir quels sont les obstacles qui se dressent, qui empêchent la ratification par la République de Côte d'Ivoire du deuxième protocole facultatif se rapportant au pacte international sur les droits civils et politiques concernant l'abolition de la peine de mort. Il vous souviendra, mesdames et messieurs, que lors de la 32e session du Conseil des droits de l'homme, la Côte d'Ivoire s'était engagée dans ce sens. Et cela ressort du rapport qui nous est soumis. Toujours au titre de la peine de mort, vous savez également que depuis 2015, la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme a adopté un projet de protocole à la Charte africaine sur l'abolition de la peine de mort. La Commission voudrait savoir si elle peut compter sur la République de Côte d'Ivoire pour aider à la validation, à l'adoption de ce projet de protocole au niveau des organes délibérants de l'Union africaine. Maintenant, sur les disparitions forcées, il nous a été donné de constater que la Côte d'Ivoire n'a pas encore ratifié la Convention sur la protection de toutes les personnes contre les disparitions forcées. la Commission aimerait savoir quels sont les obstacles qui entravent la ratification de cet instrument. S'agissant maintenant des exécutions extrajudiciaires, je voudrais porter à votre haute attention que la Commission a adopté et validé des lignes directrices sur la protection de toutes les personnes contre les disparitions forcées. Et ma question est de savoir s'il existe aujourd'hui dans votre droit interne des dispositions spécifiques qui incriminent les disparitions forcées. Voilà les quelques questions que je voulais poser au titre de mon mécanisme. Maintenant, sur les questions subsidiaires, je voudrais vous interpeller par rapport aux articles 166 et 167 du Code de procédure pénale. C'est par rapport à la détention préventive. Vous savez, c'est pour lutter contre les longues détentions préventives, ces dispositions ont institué des délais maximums de détention préventive. Donc, c'est 6 mois, peut-être renouvelable 2 fois en matière correctionnelle, et 8 mois renouvelables 2 fois en matière criminelle. Ce qui veut dire que, dans la rigueur des principes, aucun détenu poursuivi pour des faits correctionnels ne peut passer plus de 18 mois en détention préventive en République de Côte d'Ivoire. Également, aucun détenu poursuivi pour des faits criminels ne peut être détenu plus de 24 mois dans les prisons en Côte d'Ivoire. Maintenant, ma préoccupation, c'est par rapport à l'effectivité de ces dispositions. Est-ce que la délégation ici présente peut nous donner l'assurance qu'à ce jour, aucun détenu en matière criminelle n'a passé plus de 24 mois en prison et qu'aucun détenu poursuivi pour des faits correctionnels n'a passé plus de 18 mois en matière dans les prisons ivoiriennes. L'autre question subsidiaire, c'est de savoir si en cas de longue détention non suivie de condamnation ou bien suivie de non-lieu, est-ce qu'il y a des mécanismes permettant d'indemniser ces victimes, les victimes de longue détention non suivies de condamnation? Ça, c'est la deuxième question. La seconde question que je voudrais poser est relative à l'assistance des personnes qui sont poursuivies en justice. Vous savez que l'article 74 de votre Code de procédure pénale et l'article 90 de votre Code de procédure pénale prévoient la possibilité pour toute personne poursuivie d'être assistée d'un avocat. Mais à la lecture de l'article 90, on se rend compte qu'il y a dans certaines localités, il n'y a pas d'avocat. Cela pose un problème parce qu'en réalité, tous les citoyens, quel que soit leur lieu de résidence, doivent bénéficier d'une égale protection de la loi en matière s'agissant des droits de la défense. Quelles sont les mesures qui sont prises en République de Côte d'Ivoire pour arrêter de sorte que toute personne peut se faire assister d'un parent ou d'un ami de son choix? L'inquiétude que j'ai à ce niveau, c'est que cette disposition est en contradiction avec une disposition communautaire qui oblige l'État de Côte d'Ivoire. C'est le règlement 5 de l'UEMOA sur la profession d'avocat. Que dit ce règlement? Ce règlement dit que devant toute juridiction et en tout état de procédure, la représentation des personnes physiques ne peut être assurée que par les avocats. Donc il y a une non-confiance entre ces deux dispositions. Quelles sont les dispositions communautaires par rapport à cette disposition qui est le ministre de la Justice, je cite le rapport, pour faire injonction au juge d'avoir à délivrer un certificat de nationalité. Mon inquiétude, c'est que est-ce que cette injonction d'un ministre de la Justice qui appartient à l'exécutif, à un juge, ne porte pas atteinte au principe de la séparation des pouvoirs? Alors même que il est dit à l'article 100 de la loi 72-852 que le ministre de la Justice lui-même a la possibilité de délivrer ce certificat de nationalité. Voilà les quelques questions que je voulais partager avec vous en vous remerciant pour votre attention. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Merci beaucoup, commissaire Idrissa. Je vais maintenant passer la parole à la commissaire au Ghana, Lita au Ghana. Pour 2 mécanismes, ça va être les populations indigènes et puis au nom des Topsi Sono sur la liberté d'expression. Vous avez 14 minutes. Vous avez la parole.
Asante sana mwenyekiti. Thank you very much, Honorable President, for giving me the floor. Having said that, our election and freedom of expression notes that the right to information is enshrined in Article 19, paragraph 62. It also notes the creation of the Commission on Access to Public Information and Documentation pursuant to 2013 law on the access to information of public interest as indicated in paragraph 234 and 237 of the report. The first question is, what measures has the state taken to, 1, align the 2013 law with the Commission's model law on access to information in Africa? Secondly, to raise public awareness on the access to information, national law, and ensure that citizens know their rights and that private and public entities are aware of their responsibility to guarantee access to information. Thirdly, raise awareness on the existence of the Commission on access to public information and documentation and ensure that it is accessible to the general public. The second question is, what are the prerogatives or privileges of the Commission on access to public information and documentation? And the third question on this is, does the financing structure of the Commission on access to public information allow it to perform its duties effectively and independently? With regard to freedom of expression, Commission takes note of the reference to paragraph 238 of the report to the rankings established by Reporters Without Borders. The Commission would like to commend Côte d'Ivoire for the movement, progressive movement from number 159 to 71 in that ranking. The Commission therefore takes note of the National Media Authority and the Higher Authority for Audiovisual Communication referred to in paragraph 237 of the report, and would like to know, 1, whether this authority is a statutory body and what are its powers, functions, and achievements. 2, what is the extent of control, if any, that the National Media Authority and the Higher Authority for Audiovisual Communication exercise over media publications in Côte d'Ivoire? 3, what measures are in place to ensure the independence and impartiality of the National Media Authority and the Higher Authority? What is the financing structure of the National Media Authority? With regard to media